Hey everyone, and welcome back to another review. I'm aware I haven't done one in a while, but I decided with the release of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny that I'd re-watch all of the beloved classics. It's just a shame I have to go through all these before getting to everyone's favourite. I'm joking, it's okay. Raiders of the Lost Ark was released way back in 1981. Spielberg was in a bit of a rough state, so he needed a hit and decided to team up with George Lucas. But he wanted to create a franchise, and thus Indiana Jones was born. This film in general is just a very fun and exciting adventure. I don't really think you can sit through it and not be at least somewhat entertained. The stunts and set pieces are all very well choreographed, and the film isn't half bad to look at, with incredible practical effects from ILM. It opens up with the silhouette of a man in a hat going through a forest. There's a lot of mystery in the beginning of what's about to happen. Before you know it, one of the other two tries to shoot him with no build-up, but the gun is quickly wrenched from his hand by the famous whip, and Indy's face is revealed to us. Out of every reveal we get for Indy, this is by far my favourite. The music, the build-up, everything is just perfect. I think everyone knows the first scene with the boulder, which again, very tense and exciting, as well as being slightly disturbing at times. Of course, I mainly remember it from when it was parodied in The Simpsons. One big thing we learn as an audience is how Indy hates snakes, and honestly, who can blame him? If I was stuck in a plane with spiders, I would be very pathetic. The snakes are an element that remains throughout the film as well as the series, and I love this joke because it humanises Indy quite a bit, and it makes you love him a lot more. It's also explained to us soon in how Indy is also a professor at a college teaching archaeology, although it's made clear why everyone is actually there. This is a scene that never gets old for me because it's funny, but there's not several jokes crammed in. It's one simple joke paced to perfection, and it pays off, proving why Spielberg is such a master at direction. The characters are all very memorable as well. This is another classic film with a strong female protagonist done right. She's not just some annoying girl running around dressed and made to look like a man forcing feminism down our throats. She just shows initiative and is able to get herself through some tough situations, and obviously she can drink for Britain and still remain fully conscious, which is quite the skill on its own. Anyway, the whole point of the adventure in this film is that Indy must retrieve the Ark of Covenant. Of course, this proves to be difficult because he's going up against the Nazis, who are also trying to desperately get the artifact. Another standout moment for me is the fight between Indy and the big Nazi played by Pat Roach. This is a scene that for me has stuck in my head. The music building up the intensity and the choreography of the fight itself, showing off how Indy always manages to get out of a situation at the last minute through the grit of his teeth. The pacing of the film is very good for the most part. You never find yourself checking the time or waiting desperately for the next scene to take place. It just flows very well during its 2-hour runtime, which is something I can rarely say for most modern films. I think another standout moment would have to be when Marion is in a drinking showdown with one of the locals. It's a scene most people remember because they initially fool you into thinking Marion is quite small and weak, but she ends up being the exact opposite. It's a fun scene and I enjoy it on every viewing. The following scene with Indy is a favourite of mine just because I love seeing Indy get into quick drawing fights. Everything about it's good, the sound effects, the set design. You're fully immersed into this exciting world. This leads me on to another key aspect, which is how lightly grim and eroded everything looks. If Indy gets into a fight, he looks dirty and sweat builds up on his face like it should. And I think a big part of this is that A, it was practical, B, it was shot on film, but mainly they didn't have a huge budget. So I don't think they were focused on making everything look super clean and sleek, which again is something they get wrong in many big budget blockbusters today. I think the melting face is one thing everyone remembers because it stays with you. Sure, today it doesn't look 100% realistic, but that's not the point. It's just a horrific idea to imagine, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. Even now, after some of the disturbing things I've seen in heavy 18 rated horror films, this scene still slightly gets to me because it's just so creative. The costume design of Indy is really clever because it was a fairly cheap and simple costume, but it's believable, and it leaves a very heavy impression. I don't think there's anyone who doesn't now see a fedora and immediately think about Indiana Jones. When you watch this film, it slightly makes you want to become an archaeologist and go on these adventures, but in general, it's a wonderful piece of escapism I can watch any day of the week. I highly rate this. It's not a film that makes you question aspects of life. It's not a film that's a unique art house experience. It's just fun and exciting, and often that's all you really want a film to be. It's not my favourite in the series, but it is for many people, and I can see why. If you've not seen it, are you living under a rock? Seriously, it's Indiana Jones, for crying out loud. But definitely give it a watch if you haven't. Anyway, that's all I have to say on Raiders of the Lost Ark, but I'll see you next time for the Temple of Doom.